first of all today we want to take a quick look at the different varieties of oranges in the shops right now. Mary, these little ones, it's a good time for them, isn't it? But they're almost over. They've been in since about the middle of the autumn, I think.
That's right, and all over Christmas.
The clementines we've got here. Now they're a darker red skin, is that right?
Really bright, yes. And there are two kinds. Some have a few pips in, but they have a beautiful flavour.
And they're very easy to peel, of course.
Yes.
And the satsumas are possibly easier.
Yes, they're easier and lovely for small children because they can do it themselves. It's one of the first things they can do with a way of handling fruit.
Well, they come in about October and they're just about over. And in fact, mandarins aren't in the shops any longer, are they? Which is the other small one.
Just finished. Just finished.
But these are in the shops, the navels. I think they're super at the moment.
Yes, they're lovely and they're from Spain.
And of course the good thing about you can always tell the navel by the centre here, literally by the navel.
Yes, and they have a slightly thinner skin than the Jaffa oranges.
The Jaffa over here come from where? Israel, obviously.
Yes, and they're just arriving at the moment and they're absolutely at their peak.
Now they have very few pips or none at all. Really.
None at all, really, and ideal for something like an orange salad or when you don't want any pips.
And the lemons, what about those? They've come down a bit in price, thank goodness.
Yes, and this is the very best time of year from them. They're coming in from Spain, and those are beautiful.
And these ugly-looking things are the ones we're dealing with today, largely, aren't they? The Seville orange.
Seville oranges, and they're usually marked skin, but they shouldn't have any green on them. But it doesn't matter if the skin's slightly marked, and they're a little bit knobbly, and they look totally different. They're not so shiny as the other oranges.
And of course, the thing is about these, they are bitter.
And they make the best marmalade.
Well, let's get on to the making of marmalade. Are they the only kind that can be used in marmalade?
Not the only kind, but the best kind. In the middle of the summer, you may want to make marmalade or run out of what you've made, and a 3-fruit marmalade is a good idea. Something bitter in it, like lemons and grapefruit, and then you can use sweet orange with it. But I don't think it's quite as good as a Seville orange marmalade.
Well, let's get the recipe for today's marmalade. What is the basis of it? What are you calling it?
It's a minced peel marmalade because it's easy to make, and mincing is about the easiest way of doing it because you're slicing it by hand. It takes time. For this recipe, we need 3 pounds of bitter oranges, 2 lemons, 5 pints of water, and 6 pounds of sugar. That's double the amount of sugar than of oranges, which is easy to remember.
So 3 pounds of Seville oranges, 2 lemons, 6 pounds of granulated sugar, and 5 pints of water.
That's right.
Good. So how do we start to operate on these Seville
First
oranges?
of all, often the end is still in the orange. Take that off, cut it in half, and as you see, it's absolutely packed full of seeds, of pips. And you'd recognise it anyway by being so full of seeds. Now, to take the juice out, press it down hard, and it doesn't matter if you don't get absolutely every bit of juice out because it goes through the mincer and it would be taken out into the peel. There we are. And then any little bit that's left, just spoon out. And it doesn't matter if you leave a little bit of the pith, it makes a bit more marmalade, but don't leave too much. Then the 1 or 2 pips there. And I put this onto muslin, and the muslin is wrapped round all the pips and infused in the marmalade.
Why is that? Why are they important?
Because it helps to give a good gel. They contain pectin, and then the gel comes through the bag and helps the marmalade to set. So if we take the corners, I've got double layer of muslin, just to be sure, because if you give it a squeeze and it bursts, it would spoil the marmalade. And then put a piece of string round the outside. And you'll notice I've got a rather long piece of string so that I can tie it to the handles of the pan, and then it doesn't get lost at the bottom.
Is marmalade making very different from jam making, by the way?
No, all very similar. And except the proportion of sugar is sometimes different, but it's just the same principles. There we are, that's ready to go in. Now to the mincing. I'm going to use an electric mincer. You may not have got an electric mincer. You could use a hand one. This is a very efficient one, and it's got a clamp to put it down on the table.
So it shouldn't slip?
No, but I do find that, you know, when you put those things on your windscreen, your licence, if you lick it, it sticks better. So let me just lick that, and that makes it a better seal to the table, and then you just put the clamp across. There we are, and it's absolutely firm. and it doesn't slip about. But I'm going to use the electric mincer today, and I'm just going to cut the peel in strips.
Does it matter what size strips you cut it into?
No, that's convenient for this particular mincer, and I'm using a coarse grade in the mincer because I want a coarse cut marmalade. And you'll see that I've already in fact done the marmalade. It's all minced through, and the juice is there too. So I'm just going to switch it on. And then the remainder of the juice from the lemon squeezer in with it too.
And you've got the lemons in there too, have you?
That's right. All the lemons, all the several oranges, and the juice. I'm now going to cook it in a preserving pan. Here we go. All the peel and juice.
Do you have to have a preserving pan?
For this one you need a very large pan or a preserving pan because you need something about 15 pints. And then the water, the 5 pints, now I have several jugs here. That's 2, 4, 5. And then the pips. Can you pass me the pips that we've done so beautifully in a bag? There we are. Drop them in. And then so I don't lose them, I'm just going to tie them to the bag, to the side. There we are. Now the essential part of this is to get the peel really tender. And this means simmering gently for 2 hours, and gradually, there's no lid on the pan, so gradually it will boil away, but you only want it to boil away by half. So gently, gently simmering, and it doesn't need to be watched. There's lots of water in there, and it won't stick to the bottom, so you can be doing other jobs.
So the point of this is to get the peel soft. Now, is it not a good thing, couldn't you sort of soak it overnight beforehand and get it soft that way?
They used to do this. I don't find it an advantage at all. Just simmer it for the 5 minutes longer, because often it isn't a good thing to leave it soaking in a metal pan, and sometimes one hasn't got a bowl big enough to soak it with all the water. So that just wants to be brought to the boil and simmered until tender.
What about the stewed pulp that you can buy in cans?
This is a very good second to homemade marmalade, and also in perhaps September you've run out, you can make it from a canned puree. It's not quite as good as your own, and of course it's more expensive.
So you leave that then for 2 hours.
Yes, and then it becomes reduced and tender, and I've got a pan over here that it is reduced and tender, and it's a different colour, and you can see it's much more pulpy, Judith, you see. And so there's not a lot of surplus water. And also I've got the pips in there, and it's at this stage that you want to squeeze out any excess, or all the excess liquid, the sort of gel from the pips, and just scrape it down. And what I do is I scrape it down with a spoon now, and I've got a plate here, and later on when it's a little bit cooler I'll squeeze the remainder. And I'm not going to put my hand on that because it's absolutely boiling, so I'm going to put it down here on the glass plate and squeeze it out later. And it's at this stage now, it's hot. I'm going to add the sugar, and the sugar really should be warmed, and this is warm.
What do you mean, how warmed?
Well, put it into the oven if you've had it on so that it's warm. It just means that you'll be able to keep it, not lower the temperature of this concentrated puree. Just makes the process quicker.
Now the sugar, is that preserving sugar or is it granulated, ordinary granulated?
This is ordinary granulated sugar. I'm not making marmalade for competitions, and it doesn't matter if it isn't absolutely prize extra clear marmalade, and preserving sugar is more expensive. And I find granulated excellent, and also you can buy it in the shop on the corner. There we are. Now the peel is beautifully tender. It's had 2 hours simmering, and now this wants to boil very rapidly once the sugar has dissolved, and it's just leave it for a few moments to dissolve, then boil rapidly.
Now, do you have to have a thermometer to test the sort of temperature of it?
No, I don't have a thermometer. I use the test that my mother used, and that's putting it on a saucer. So leave that to boil, stirring frequently for 15 to 20 minutes. And I've got some here that has been just about 15 minutes boiling, and I'm going to test it. Put a little on a saucer. When my mother used to do this, you see, Judith, it's changed colour. You can see through it. It looks totally different. First of all, I'm just going to take this little bit of scum off the top here. Can you see there?
Yes.
The bubbles.
Now, what is that? What is the scum? Sort of
That's just
a residue.
It's the residue, and it's from the pith, and it doesn't make clear marmalade. So I'm taking that off.
You told me just you're hurrying over that scum bit, but you say you can use it on marmalade puddings if you've got energy.
Yes, indeed. You could do an
Sans
upside
pudding.
down pudding with the marmalade at the bottom. And this is lovely and clear. And you do the test on the saucer. In the old days, they used to put it outside on the windowsill, but I'm just going to put it in the refrigerator. And if the scum, if a skin comes over the top, that now is runny. But when it's been in the refrigerator for 3 minutes, when you run your finger across the top, the skin should form. So I'm going to turn that off because I'm sure it's done. Because it's had the allocated time of boiling, 15 to 20 minutes. The damage is done by too long a boiling, then it gets dark and it gets past the point of setting.
And just before you move over to the fridge, another bit of damage is adding the sugar too soon, isn't it, on that other stage?
Yes, if you must simmer the oranges peel for 2 hours until it's really tender, because if you add the sugar too soon, it'll make the peel tough, and it's horrid to come across those leathery pieces.
Too hard.
Yes.
Right, you put that in the fridge now then
Yes.
for 3 minutes, did you say?
Just about 3 minutes.
Well, Mary, it's been in the fridge for 3 minutes, so let's see how it's looking now.
Oh, good. It's fine.
Is it?
Yes.
Relief, relief.
Now you see there. Now you see that skin, Judith, across the top. That's how it should be. It's ready and going to set. And that's the best test. A thermometer, it's supposed to be 220. In some marmalades, it's 221. And who's got a thermometer anyway? And then it has to be cooled before you actually put it into the pots.
Now, how long do you suggest you leave it to cool?
About 10 minutes. This is because, 1, you would crack your jars if you put boiling marmalade in it, and 2, you would find that the peel would rise to the top. So to have a time cooling is essential.
So this is now cooled, Mary, and it is ready for putting in the jars, is it?
Yes, that's quite ready. And I've got an old jug that I do this with. It's got a nice pouring lip, which is an essential. A cup's all right, but it doesn't come out quite so easily.
You just shovel it into there, I see.
That's right. And because it's lost temperature, it's just about over 140, I can still hold the jar. I rest it on the side. And it's a good idea, if you're the clumsy sort, to do this over newspaper, because it's much easier to clean newspaper than it is to wipe the table.
Presumably it's going to get very sticky table too if you kept on spilling it. Now, any size of jar, Mary?
This is 1 pound jars I'm putting it in. Some of the jars, we always use old ones, are now, the bought jam is in 12 ounces, some of it, but I always put them in pound jars, and this amount makes 10 pounds of marmalade. And then to the topping of the marmalade, I'm now using these plastic lids. I find them very good because you don't have to put a wax disc underneath. They're in the home, they're reusable, and should you put the pot of jam on the table and you've got a cellophane top, then you've nothing to put on the next day, but you can reuse these.
They're a very good idea.
But you must put them on a hot jar of marmalade. It must be over 140.
Why is that? Because it seals everything in
That's
properly.
right, and you get a vacuum. As the marmalade cools, the lid is drawn back down again. But you cannot use them on screw-top jars because they don't fit. It's got to be the old-fashioned 1 pound jam jar.
And you can tell that the vacuum has worked when you get a little dimple in the top, can you?
Yes, that's
of
right.
the lid. But if you have got the screw-top jars then, which you have been storing up to use for your marmalade, you go back to what? The wax, the paper and the
Yes.
elastic bands and things?
Yes, and to do that, I thought that the old-fashioned way of doing it with dipping on a saucer, really, surely one should do it with a pastry brush. But in fact, I'll do it on one of these, show you again. The old-fashioned way of just dipping it into a saucer is very efficient, and a pastry brush isn't quicker. So put a disc in the top, a wax disc, and then dip the cellophane into water until it's damp, and then the wet side uppermost, like that, and then just press it round. And it doesn't matter if it's just a little bit creased on top. As it cools, you'll find that it will grip. and become absolutely tight.
That keeps it airtight then, obviously.
Yes. And then I've put labels. I've used some rather attractive ones with a nice line around the outside. It's essential to put the year on it so that you use it up within the year.
Does it ever go sugary? I mean, I sometimes find marmalade in the larder which has gone rather sugary. Is that because I've left the lid off it, obviously?
It's not well sealed or the wrong proportion of sugar. But this marmalade I don't think you'll find will go sugary at all.
What about the price, the relative price of this marmalade?
The mince peel marmalade is 7p a pound to make. That is if you've paid 10p for your oranges. You may pay a little bit more, then it would be a little bit more. In the markets recently they've been about 10p.